Welcome back to the Student Hub Live. In this session, we take a look at student satisfaction and why it matters. And I'm joined by Alexander Bailey, who you'll have just seen in that video, who's one of our OU ambassadors and is currently doing a degree apprenticeship with us here.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's really great. So I study the business management degree apprenticeship. So I was employed by the OU in 2016, October. So I've been here for a good three years now, coming to the final year of my course, and being the first of my cohort in the one as a management apprentice has afforded me opportunities, as you say, to represent the OU and do fantastic things like this. So, yep, I'm working in the business development unit of the OU and supporting in business development at the moment. So it's been a fantastic opportunity, and it's been great so far.
Brilliant. Now, apprenticeships have been something quite new, both in terms of the amount that they've sort of grown in the sector, but also at the Open University, and you're one of the sort of first people in it. What happens? What is a degree apprenticeship?
Yeah, so in essence, a degree apprenticeship is basically you look to seek employment, and then whilst you're in employment, you have 20% of your working week off to study a full degree full-time whilst working full-time. So in essence, it gives you the opportunity to develop a career and study at the same time. So I mean, it's fantastic. It's typically been fantastic for people mid-career. Yeah. They've been able to actually, instead of putting their career on hold to go to university and study, they've been able to say, well, actually, I can do it while I work. I can develop my career. I can develop them competencies in-house and actually work while I study. And it's been great. But then similarly for people that are new into a career like myself, it's given me the opportunity to actually feed what I learn back into the workplace, which has been phenomenal, especially in my development, I think.
So you're studying 20% of the time and doing modules. Yeah. How much of that then links back into, because business is very, you know, there's a lot of theory and things, and then you've probably got loads of emails and other practical things to do. How do you find that balance then between studying and working, and how related are they?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting you say that. I think what I've noticed as well from my peers at university is that a lot of the theory that they study is, I mean, they learn it and then they don't get a chance to apply it. But what I'm doing is I'm taking some theory and I can immediately do it. I mean, I remember my first week on the course and I was actually quite blown away because it was the first time that I'd seen a piece of theory in practice, and it was a week in the course. It was a SWOT analysis of a business, and it's really simple: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, just looking at a business plan. Yeah. And it was just laid out in a SWOT analysis, so it's very internally focused. But being able to actually have that piece of theory and see how it's applied immediately was like, okay, it's starting to make sense. I can see it's clicking. So that was a massive bonus. So being able to apply that theory is something that I find actually extremely satisfying. So I find that a good tool and something that's really interesting for students to be able to do, because it gives you the opportunity to do it, especially when you're doing an apprenticeship.
Okay. Now you've touched on the word satisfying, and you've sort of mentioned, which is great because that's the whole topic of conversation today, so I want to unpick that a bit. So you mentioned applying something feels really satisfying. Yeah. And you've got these two things going on here in terms of the studying and the sort of working. When we sort of spoke before this session, we were talking about satisfaction and how you knew you were satisfied. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that now?
I mean, I think it's a fantastic question, because I think it applies differently to everybody. I think everybody finds a different sense of satisfaction, but something that I've been thinking about satisfaction, you find satisfaction in the smaller things with as a uni student, I find. So things like getting TMA results in, or finishing a TMA. So when you've been sitting there and you've been studying all night and you send it off, it's a tremendous sense of satisfaction when you think, right, it's done, I can relax a little bit. But looking at the long term, I think a university degree, and certainly when you do it as a career-wise, affords you the opportunity to achieve long-term satisfaction as well, which I think's really important, because whilst the degree can be difficult, it can be hard, and doing it full-time whilst working, in my sense, is very difficult. And I'm sure a lot of students out there will relate to exactly what I'm saying. I think the long-term satisfaction that's achieved from a degree is something that always needs to be you need to bear that in mind whilst going forward. But in the short term, it tends to be things like finishing an essay, applying it to the workplace has always been something that I found extremely satisfying immediately, because you can see it's developing a career, it's supporting you along the way.
Yeah. And it makes sense if you've got something that can be applied very quickly and easily, but that doesn't happen for everybody, particularly not, I guess, in the social sciences, you know, if you're looking at sort of economic models and things like that. Let's see what people said at home, because we asked you what gives you satisfaction in your studies, and everyone, luckily, says that they find studying satisfying, but let's see which aspects. So here we can see that 40% say applying learning, 40% something else, and only 20% say finishing essays. Grades, interestingly, not featuring. Now, I'd like to talk about that. Also, let us know what that other something else is in the chat, and HJ and George will feed that in. Okay, so grades. I mean, this is a really important thing because you sort of mentioned getting my scores back, and then you started talking about finishing the assignments and things like that. How do you measure that sort of thing about getting your scores back? Do you think, oh yeah, I'm really satisfied that I got 67% or whatever score you got from your assignment? Is that something that you sort of ever think about when you get those grades back?
Yeah, I think when you're doing the essay, I always think that I sit there and I think how good I'll feel if I do well. So it spurs me on,
but what
if
does
that makes
well
sense.
look like then?
And that's a good question. I think well to me is knowing that I've done everything that I can to get that score. So that score to me is a reflection of how hard I've worked, in essence. So looking at it from that point of view, it's really difficult to measure. It's really difficult to measure because everybody's different. Everybody finds different satisfaction in things. I find satisfaction in getting a good score, but simply I think I'm quite a competitive person. So I like to look at it and compare it to the last score that I've got, and then if I beat it, I find that quite satisfying. And if not, then it's fine. It's just something that I think I can work on. But it's interesting to see down there that a lot of people find other elements more satisfying than good scores.
One of my colleagues, Bart, did a study on whether the most successful students were the most satisfied, and he found that they weren't.
Okay.
Which I think is really, really interesting. And it's a really interesting point. We've been having some discussions recently on one of my modules, Y032, and talking about sharing scores and people sort of saying, you know, oh, I want to get a better score or worse, and sort of being measured against those things, either on your own sort of trajectory or against other people's. But there are a number, and they often don't really relate to how well you did. They relate to the extent to which you answered a question that was set, not necessarily about your ability. So I wonder if you could sort of share some of the ideas about satisfaction that you measure for yourself, I guess, when you're sort of saying, oh, I did really well at that. Do you ever sort of think, I'm really trying to get to grips with this and therefore I did well at that, and you sort of can unpick what you're trying to do and be satisfied on that basis? Or is it more a score?
I completely get what you're saying. I mean, a score is basically what's reflected at the end of your degree, but understanding something is a different concept. Yeah. And I think that's why I mentioned earlier about applying your learning, because to apply something you have to really understand it. Yeah. And to me, that's always been the most satisfying thing, is actually noticing I get it, I can see it in practice, and I understand it. But to really get to grips with something, to really understand it, is the most satisfying thing. It's just trying to reflect that in your score, because at the end of the day, the competencies that you build up are reflected on your course and on your degree. So to really understand something, I think is the essence of what a university is about, and it's what we try to achieve. So yeah, I do think that's the most satisfying element. It's just nice when that's reflected in the work that you do. Yeah. But as you say, I mean, being able to apply something and understand it is a fantastic thing to be able to do. It's also, the application doesn't just come in work. You have to be able to then apply that, I guess, to academic writing, and be able to represent it.
Now, what about for some students who might be doing things that they can't necessarily apply? Have you got any advice for people about, I mean, you sort of mentioned you can apply things more broadly. I mean, one of the things we do on one of my modules is we'll look at something like accounting, and then we might say, oh, you know, you're not going to necessarily be able to go and do that now, but you could actually go and do a budget of your finances to see how many shoes you can buy or whatever. You know, so there are ways of applying things in sort of more lateral contexts. What advice would you give to other people then who may be studying something that's quite specific that they can't then apply right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the beauties of business is, even if you don't do it in your specific workplace, you can always find somewhere that does, because I mean, it's business. It's involved in everything, and also you can apply it to fictitious case studies, and you can actually see how this piece of learning affected them. Yeah. To look at something more laterally across the piece is, I mean, it's something that I've never actually had to do, which is quite lucky, because my course naturally lends itself to being able to understand. I think for those individuals, it's about finding a case where it's actually worked, or where that's actually applied, or looking at an example of in your life where that learning has actually helped you. Yeah. And I think that really helps aid understanding, because you can actually take a piece of theory, as you say, accounting, and looking at how that affects your day-to-day life, and then all of a sudden you start to understand it, and that's always really helped me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Because I think you probably can't remember your first TMA score all those years ago in 2016. But again, what you can remember now with doing the degree is how to apply it and what you've learned. And getting more proficient, I think, is a really important part of the whole thing, isn't it? It's that end goal, like you say. Let's see what people are saying at home. HJ and George, how are you guys doing?
We're doing okay. We're having our answer of that question just to see what satisfies us most about study. And under the something else, we've got quite a few answers that we've come up with. So Katie and Jade like to get their TMAs done sooner rather than later. That gives us satisfaction knowing they're done, out of the way, and they're all submitted and they can carry on. Completing a unit of study and ticking it off on the study calendar, that's something that's really satisfying. I agree with that one. And just getting back the TMA, whatever the score, just to look over, see how you've done, and just get the chance to review and improve next time. And like Alexander, we also get satisfaction from being able to apply and demonstrate what you've learned as well, even if it's at home, like we said, doing our own budgets, or at work, or just having a chat about someone about what you've learned as well. We get a lot of satisfaction there, so that's great to hear.
Brilliant, excellent. That's great, and of course it avoids the stress getting your TMAs in early, which is wonderful. Now, Alex, we've been talking about belonging and community, and I guess your sort of situation is a little bit different because you're here at the Open University, so you must get quite a big sense of community. How do you feel with other students, though, just that sort of studying aspect and the sort of access to community platforms that you've got, like forums maybe, or tutorials, or Facebook, I don't know. How do you engage with other students, and do you feel part of that group?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a really good question. I mean, there is. I think I am very fortunate. I get to come to the university every day. I get to see it operation. I get to see the operations of it. I mean, and that's fantastic. But for a traditional student that's working away from the university, I mean, you can sometimes feel like there's an element of isolation, but when you utilise the tools that are put in place, the forums and potentially taking things offline and going on using other platforms such as WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups that are set up, I find there's a lot of engagement. I find there's a lot of students that are really proactive and really advocates of the OU, and they love their course, and it's really good to talk to. But I think with the OU, it's something that you have to be proactive with. I think you have to engage with students, bring students to engage with you, if that makes sense, because it's difficult for people to reach out, I think. So I think if you want to get involved. It's just about don't be shy, just be confident and put yourself out there with other students. But similarly with the support from the tutor, what I find really interesting is that I have more contact time with tutors than I do than my peers did at traditional university. So
really?
Yeah, which I found fascinating. I couldn't believe it, because I mean, they go to lectures all the time, and yet they don't have their tutor's personal number or email, which I can do at all times. And it's the same with people in the forum, other students, where you can communicate, you can talk things through. And there's day-to-day schools as well, where you can go and in some courses you can meet people and you can actually see the face behind the person. So
now we started talking about when this matters and how it matters, and I guess why people should do it, especially when you've got really busy lives. And I mean, I've seen some of these WhatsApp groups and things, and it's like ping, 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 and it can get really overwhelming trying to follow a thread. And I know for some students it is too overwhelming. What do you engage with, and how does it benefit you as a learner?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, what I found really interesting, what I found really helped me, is actually finding a study buddy. So somebody on the course that's going through a similar journey to me, and we bounce ideas off each other. We were on the same program, we're in different cohorts, but we are doing the same course at the same time. And I found that really useful. It's somebody that I know I can go to, I can share in a confidential space and actually say, how are you getting on? What do you need? Do you need any support? Can I help you? And then completely vice versa. Is there anything I can do for you? How can we help each other?
Yeah.
And I found that extremely beneficial. Initially, it was done all online on forums and stuff, but now it's been taken on WhatsApp groups and occasional meetups to see. And I found that extremely useful for my course. So that's something I'd strongly recommend, is being able to find somebody that can guide you through that process and help you, that's going through a very similar journey. Because
often at 3 a.m. in the morning, the night before a TMA is due.
Absolutely. As one of the people said earlier, getting it in is really satisfying. Getting it done, for me, it's much more of a last-minute operation, just sitting there typing away.
Oh yeah, same here. Okay. Now, often when we have this NSS survey, which is this student satisfaction survey, students are asked like a whole host of things. They're asked about the teaching materials and the support they've got, and really interesting, I think, your point about having more contact with tutors, because you wouldn't expect that at a distance, learning environment, and also the really specific feedback you get from your TMAs is just brilliant. Yeah. So you can see why the OU performs really well on a lot of those things, but one area that it doesn't is this whole community and belonging sort of thing. And we were talking earlier about why that might be, because often you might not think you belong to a community. If you think, well, I can't see anybody, I don't necessarily engage with, I might not even identify as a student because I'm being a mum, I'm being all these other roles in your life that you've got. So what are your thoughts then on this belonging and community aspect, and also where is it the university's responsibility to sort of support that whole idea, and where is it the students?
Yeah, I think being a distance education provider provides challenges. It's very easy for me to sit here and say we are a community. We have thousands of staff here that make this operational, and we're all. I've never met anybody that doesn't love the OU here, which is difficult to convey when it's a distance university. And I think linking people together is always the biggest challenge that a distance university faces. I think there's onus on students to make sure they connect with each other as well. However, from a university point of view, it's just about finding new ways for students to be able to communicate their ideas and be able to get involved with each other that they might not be able to do at the moment. But to answer that question, I think is extremely difficult because of the nature of our university and the nature of how we teach. I think it's I think it can be tough to sort of think of answers to that. However, I think it's just about finding innovative ways to make sure people communicate and make sure that they feel like they're supported. Because so long as people feel like they're supported, I think that's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it really, really is. What are you going to do then when you've finished your degree apprenticeship, and how where does that leave you in the OU and stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at the moment, I'm working in a partnership channel. So basically, we look to work with FE colleges, and we kind of look to develop apprenticeship curriculum all the way up from levels 2 and 3, all the way up to level 7. So we provide their employer base and colleges and private providers complete sort of scope from 2 up to 7 of apprenticeship. So I'm quite passionate about it. It's something that I really like doing. And I've got about a year left on my programme now, so hopefully I'll secure a job. I've developed competencies in the workplace which I think are strong enough for me to be an effective member of the team, and I'm proving that so far. So going forward, I hope to step into sort of that role at the moment and do what I'm doing full time and be able to give back to the business for the investment they've made in me.
How exciting. And would you recommend this as a route, the apprenticeship route for people, and how can people find out about what's on offer? Because is it tricky to get in?
Well, do you know what? Because it was so new when I was doing it. It was, there wasn't much information about degree apprenticeship. So I actually, my mum helped me out, and we found it online, and we applied, because I knew I didn't quite want to go to the traditional route for university. I thought works the way for me. I want to get my foot on the career ladder. So I didn't have to sacrifice the study element. They're becoming a lot more well known, a lot more accepted, and there's a lot more understanding about that now. So I think the time is now to come into a degree apprenticeship if that's something that you're interested in. If you want to get a degree that's completely the exact same as any other degree that you would do traditionally, and you want to get your foot on the career ladder, I think it's a fantastic way to do it, and I would 100% recommend it.
Brilliant. Oh, you certainly seem very happy, so that's great. Well, Alex, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. It's been really, really interesting. H.J. George, how are you, and how is everyone at home?
Well, we're a bit stressed at the idea of submitting assignments last minute as well. That's not for everyone, it seems. But the good thing is our tutors can be quite understanding. I know I had some extra training with work, which put me behind quite a bit, but just emailed to the tutor and they were fine with extending it. So that's all fine and good. But some people like it because it helps them focus on what they're actually doing and prioritise things. But
yeah, it's, we get a lot of contact from the students when it's coming up to TMA time, funnily enough. And they're usually about ready to tear someone's head off or their own. And it's a case of sort of letting them know, don't panic. It's trying to sort of make them aware that you don't need to stress yourself every single time. And a lot of them think they'll be in trouble if they ask for the TMA extensions more than once. they think it's like a taboo that they can't cross, and it's not. Please don't ever think that. It's not something you need to worry about. It's a tool for you to use, and we're there to help support you. So it doesn't matter how many times you ask for the TMA extension. Obviously, it's better if you've got that preparation in place and all the mechanisms you need to get your TMA done in time. But we're not there to judge you. We're there to help, and we want you to know that ask for as many TMA extensions as you want. Ask for as many individual support sessions as you want. It's there to support you. It's not there to go as a whipping stick to no, you can only use this once and never again. It doesn't work that way. So we just want you to know that we're there to help. So's everyone else, and use that facility. It's there. You're paying for it. Use it.
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm particularly glad that you can, there isn't limited to using it once. In my experience, I have used it a lot, so I'm very glad about that. But just contact your tutor, and I'm sure once you finally get it in, like I'm working on mine at the moment, then you will get some satisfaction out of that. So I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
It's so easy to forget that everybody wants you to do well.
It can be, but with the TMAs, I think, when you submit it to your tutor, it's not them punishing you or trying to take marks off. It's always about them building you up and trying to work out the best way to give you feedback so you can improve and develop. And as a couple of people say in the chat, that sometimes just life gets in the way, so you can't put your best forward. But tutors know and understand that, and they can really help and support you as well.
But I would just say, just make sure if you feel that you're going to be late with your TMA, if you feel there's something that's stopping you, then the earlier you contact us, the earlier you contact your tutor, the quicker they can get back to you. If you contact them 2 days before your TMA is due, sometimes you're fighting the odds against time, and that's when, it can be a little tough for us to try and help you. So if you're more organised, if you're a little bit more timely, we can support you better.
I guess it's identifying the problem early enough
Yes.
so that you can then not stress yourself out unnecessarily, isn't it? And get the support you need. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. Thank you, Alex, for that session. We're going to have a short video break now, and we are going to end our final session for this morning's programme, which is about satisfaction and belonging, with Chris Kubake and Sam Thorne. So we're now going to show you a quick advertisement in English and then in Welsh for the NSS, the National Student Survey. Join me for the next session in just a few minutes.